Yep, and perfect. So I am Shannon Osborne. I'm the Associate Director for Student Support or in Student Support Advocacy Center. And I work primarily on the financial well-being team and creating financial literacy programs and meeting with students when they have any financial questions. And then as Carrie said, she is my amazing moderator. She has been with me when it comes to Money Smart Day since it's been in its fruition 4 years ago. So it's really exciting to see how it grows. I have been in the financial aid world for about 15 years, so my main focus is on student loan repayment and helping people get started on student loan repayment, and then also understanding what plans to choose from and everything like that. So this presentation will focus solely on that, navigating student loan repayments. Like Carrie said, if you have questions too, by the way, feel free to put them in the chat. I'm fine if you want to ask questions as we go. You can also save them to the end too. Totally fine either way. So this presentation is going to start talking a little bit about Perkins loans and private loans. This presentation primarily focuses on direct loans. So we're just going to briefly talk about other loans that students might have. We're also going to talk about how you can plan and prepare now for repayment, who direct loan servicers are and who yours could be if you want to consolidate your loans, and also the different repayment plans. And I have that organized into a chart. And then we're going to talk about income-driven repayments overall and how do you apply for income-driven repayment plans. We're also going to talk about the new SAVE plan that came out that Biden created. I think we're roughly working on about a year ago-ish. And then we're also going to talk about public service loan forgiveness, teacher loan forgiveness, forbearance, and then other forgiveness or repayment options you have in various works. And then we'll have time for questions at the end too. Okay. All right. So first to talk about Perkins loans. So again, like I said, this presentation will primarily focus on direct loans, but there are Perkins loans. This program ended September 30th of 2017. So if you did not start your college education till after September 30th, 2017, then you do not have any Perkins loans. If maybe you were an undergrad beforehand and then you did master's afterwards, you might have Perkins loans. Perkins loans have a 9-month grace period. So once a student graduates, withdrawal falls below half time, they have a 9-month grace period until they have to begin repayments. Perkins loans are typically 5 to 10 years when it becomes repayment. You also make repayments directly to your school, or sometimes your school that you borrow the loan from might contract out to a third party for them to service the loan. So here at Mason, if you graduate from Mason and had a Perkins loan, ECSI does the servicing, so you would make payments directly to ECSI on your Perkins loan. If you borrowed a Perkins loan from a different university, I recommend contacting their financial aid office to find out who you make repayments to on that Perkins loan. Perkins loans are a governmental loan, however, they are not direct loans. So if you hear things like public service loan forgiveness, income-driven repayment plans, the SAVE plan, Perkins loans do not qualify for those. So if you do want Perkins loans to qualify for that, you will have to consolidate your Perkins loans into the direct loan program. And we'll talk a little bit about consolidation later on. Next are private loans. So private loans could be like Sallie Mae, Wells Fargo, College Ave. You know you have private loans because you went ahead and you applied for that loan directly with that lender. So you contacted Wells Fargo directly, filled out an application on their website, and you signed an MPN master promissory note that says you'd repay that loan directly back to Wells Fargo. Those are typically repayments of 10 to 15 years. Payments are then made directly to the lender because the lender is the servicer. And then also you begin repayment usually right after school. Some of them do have a grace period of a little bit, so it just kind of depends on the loan. And you would just want to copy them to make sure that you know, reach out to the lender to make sure you know how the repayment terms of that particular loan works. Perkins loans would show on studentaid.gov, which we'll talk about that website, where private loans will not. If you don't know if you have private loans, you'd pull your credit report to see if you have any private loans too. Okay, so before we begin in talking studentaid.gov, I mentioned on the previous slide, that website you want to bookmark. So just because you're graduating doesn't mean studentaid.gov is going anywhere. That's still going to be our main website on how you apply for everything and how you navigate your repayments. They also have a loan simulator tool that you can use to kind of budget and estimate what your monthly payment would look like. When you log into studentaid.gov, this is what your screen will look like. So if you have anything that's needed to complete, it'll be under the My Activity screen on the homepage. There's also going to be checklists to prepare for various things. There's the loan simulator, like I talked about, a way to consolidate loans, public service loan forgiveness help tool. There's a lot of great information on studentaid.gov. But the most important is going to be also who your servicer is. So when you go into studentaid.gov, it'll tell you which one of your servicer is, and it has information to how to get to your servicer's website as well. You can also learn more about the consolidation and start preparing to see if you want to consolidate. And then also, like I said, public service loan forgiveness too. So if you haven't already logged into studentaid.gov, I recommend doing that and at least saving your login information so that you can utilize it later too. Okay, so next is who is a servicer? So a servicer is a middle organization that you make repayments to. So let's say you have an unsubsidized loan. The loan is just that, the unsubsidized loan. You are the borrower because you're taking out the loan. You are borrowing the loan from the lender, and the lender in the direct unsubsidized loan example is the US Department of Education. The US Department of Education is lending you the loan so that you can use it for school-related expenses that you have. The school is only just processing the loan, so they are only really involved in the beginning for the processing of the loan. When it becomes repayments, you're not repaying the school, you're not repaying the lender. The lender has then worked with a servicer to then say you will service these loans. So you're making repayments to the servicer on your loan from the US Department of Education. So an example of all the different types of servicers for direct loans, here's a list of all 7 of them. So example would be Mohila. So I have a loan that's an unsubsidized loan. I borrowed it from my school. I'm in repayments and I'm making payments to Mohila on behalf of US Department of Education. So there's the information for each individual servicer's website. So like I said, if you go to studentaid.gov, it's very clear who your servicer is right there. So then you can contact your servicer to set up repayments. So when I go to my studentaid.gov, I will see that Mohila is my servicer. And I know the information is mohila.com for me to reach out to. As you can see, some of these websites have studentaid.gov in them. These are all switching in the process of switching over to studentaid.gov URLs. So for example, Ed Financial used to just be, I believe it was edfinancial.com. Now it's switching over to edfinancial.studentaid.gov. They're really trying to avoid scams or avoid people getting confused about who the servicer is and who the servicer works for. So they want to make sure that they have cohesive URLs and website addresses that people can utilize to go find out who their servicer is and make repayments. So Mohila, like for example, I said, doesn't have theirs set up yet, or neither does Nelnet. So these are in the process and they're slowly switching them over to the new URL too. And like I said, you go to studentaid.gov to even find out who your servicer is for all of these. Next is consolidation. So people always ask me as soon as I graduate, like, Shannon, in your opinion, should I consolidate my loans? And I always say it just depends on your situation. I will say that when I started doing these presentations many years ago and before COVID, before all of the changes that Biden made with public service loan forgiveness, I was like, there's really no benefit in consolidating your loans because you aren't really getting anything from it. The reason that I say that is because even though you have multiple different loans, you're still making one payment on all of your loans. The example I want to give is, let's say you're an undergraduate student and you borrowed loans all 4 years. So your first year you borrowed a sub and unsubsidized loan. The second year you also had a sub and unsubsidized loan, and third and fourth year, so on. So when you pull your credit report, you're going to see you have 8 different loans there. So a lot of times people consolidate because they're like, I don't want to have 8 loans on my credit report. I only want to have one, and I want to combine those together. Other people might consolidate because they're like, I don't want to have 8 monthly payments. I only want to have 1 monthly payment, so I want to consolidate them together. When it becomes up to your monthly repayment, you're still making one payment on all of the loans, no matter how many loans you have. So you have 8 loans out there, you're still making one payment on all 8 loans at the same time. So it's not like you're paying $20 to this loan, $20 to this loan, $20 to this loan. You're just paying $20 to all 8 loans together. Then when it came to things like public service loan forgiveness or direct loans and the income-driven repayment plans, that's where people got mistaken and thought that they had the right loans beforehand, and we found out that they were not with the right loans. So when direct loan program was created, which was back in 2010, there used to be Family Federal Education Loans, or FFEL as they called them before. Then public service loan forgiveness and a direct loan program was started because, long story short, the housing market crashed and the government said, you're not going to do the same thing with the housing market banks, you're not going to do the same thing with the housing market. You're not going to do the same thing when it comes to student loans. So we're going to take them over to the government side, and we're going to make some direct loans directly from the government instead of from the bank. When that happened, we also created public service loan forgiveness at the same time as well. And so at that time, there was a lot of push in marketing to get people to consolidate their loans into direct loans to qualify for public service loan forgiveness. But people didn't really understand why they needed to consolidate, what consolidation even was. So a lot of people just ignored it. Then they were like, oh, public service loan forgiveness is great. I'm going to work in 10 years and then get forgiveness. And at the end of 10 years, they found out they had wrong loans all the time. So they didn't have direct loans. They had family federal education loans, and they never did the consolidation back in 2010. So that's why Biden made some changes, and he did a new process where he said, even if you had the wrong loans, you can still consolidate now to make them count. And there was a new process that was set forth with that too. The other thing,
Question, Shannon. Does consolidating loans improve credit?
yeah, so good question. So I'm going to circle back to that one. Let me get through a couple more, and then I'll answer that question in a second. So next thing are private loans. So you cannot consolidate private loans into direct loans. It can only be either government direct or government related loans. So the Perkins loans can consolidate, the family federal education loans can consolidate because those are all government loans. A private loan is a private company. You cannot consolidate those into the direct loan program. And you also can consolidate all of your direct loans together. Another reason why you would want to consolidate your loans together is what I've been finding out from meeting with students is that years down the line, they decided not to consolidate their loans. Maybe they had 10 different loans on there. They go to try to buy a house, they pull their credit report, and it's like, whoa, you have 10 different student loans. That's a lot. So then they were like, we really want you to consolidate those so you just have one loan on your credit report instead of 10, so it looks better long term. So I say this to say there's a lot more benefits now to consolidation. So I strongly encourage everybody to consolidate their loans because the fact it's going to be better for future home buying. It's going to be better when it comes to income-driven repayment plans, and it's going to be better overall. And to answer the question about how it works with your credit report, so consolidation is a hit to your credit report. It will decrease your credit score by a couple points. We're talking about maybe like 10 points at the time you're doing it, because consolidation is just that you are putting everything together into one loan. So you're still applying for a new loan. This new loan is just then called a direct consolidated unsubsidized loan or direct consolidated subsidized loan, depending upon which one you have, but it's a direct consolidated loan. However, then once you start making repayments on it, you will quickly increase your credit score. So you really don't want to consolidate your loans at the same time you're buying a house, for example. Like you don't want to consolidate today and then close on a house in a week, because obviously that's going to drop your credit score a little bit. That's going to change that final mark when you go to close your house. However, if you consolidate right after you graduate and then you buy a home in a couple years, it won't impact anything. Your credit score will then increase because you've been making on-time payments and everything. Carrie, are there any more questions?
That is all for now. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. All right, let me. Okay. So next is this repayment plan chart that I created. So there are multiple different repayment plan options you can choose. So I kind of put it all into one chart here as a reference. So first is a standard repayment. So if you don't do anything at all when you go into repayment, you are just going to make an on-time monthly payment to how much it's going to be to pay off the entire loan, the principal and the interest at the end of 10 years. So that payment will not change. So let's say you only borrowed $1,000 in your entire time when you were a student. That might be an affordable amount because maybe you're only paying like less than $50 a month on your repayments, and you're able to easily pay that off in 10 years, no problem. If you borrowed $200,000 of student loan debt while you were in school, that might be a high amount. So maybe that's closer to $2,000 a month that you're paying to have to pay it off in 10 years. And you look at it and say, that's not affordable. I cannot pay $10,000 or $2,000 a month to pay this off in 10 years. So all of these other repayment plan options are reliefs to the standard repayment. So if you don't do anything at all, your servicer will send you a bill and the payments begin 6 months after you graduate. So in 6 months, you have a grace period. So it's like you were still in school. And then after 6 months, you go into repayment. So if you don't do anything at all, it's going to be based off the 10-year standard repayment. If you want to be on what's called the graduated repayment plan, you would contact your servicer and ask for the graduated repayment plan. That repayment plan increases every 2 years. So the idea is that when you first graduate, you're not making that much money because you have your first job, but then over time, hopefully you get a pay increase at work, you get a promotion, you get a new job, and so you financially can afford to pay more over time. So the first 2 years you'd pay X amount of money, the next 2 years you paid X amount of money, and so on and so forth. But your servicer would give you the full map of what your monthly payments would be for the next 10 years. I don't love that repayment plan option. It is nice because it offers relief in the beginning to have a lower monthly payment that's not so high and can give you some time. But at the same time, you can't guarantee you can financially afford to pay that increased amount later on because you don't know what's going on with your job and everything. So sometimes I like the extended repayment plan better. So the extended repayment plan is 25 years. So it's still that fixed amount of how much you pay every month. And then it's just how much do you pay it off at the end of 25 years. So instead of 10 years, it's 25 years. So it extends it. In order to qualify for the extended repayment plan, though, you have to have at least $30,000 of debt. And anytime you see on here that says how much student loan debt you have to have, that's just for your federal amount that you have, your subsidized loans. That's just for the federal amount that you have. So you cannot add private loans into the 30,000 mix. It has to be just the federal loans that you have. However, that one's hard too because it's 25 years to repay and you're still at the end paying everything and you end up paying so much of interest. The other thing to say about any of these repayment plan options, there are no penalties for paying loans off early. So you could sign up for the 25-year repayment plan and pay your loans off in 15 years and you will have no penalty because of it. So you could sign up for the lowest monthly payment plan so that you know you have a low monthly payment plan, choose to pay more every month so you can try to pay off even faster. But then 1 month, let's say you unforeseen get in a car accident and now you have to repair your vehicle, you then can fall back on that lower monthly payment that month and not have to pay as much and then be able to repair your car and then go back the next month to be more aggressive to pay off your student loans. So the standard, the graduated, the extended repayment plan all assume that you're going to pay everything off in full at the end. So the principal plus the interest you're going to pay off in full. Any questions on those three before I go into the income-driven repayment plans?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
So, in order to discuss repayment plans, you have to identify who your loaner is and then request one of the repayment plans that are listed here.
So right now I've only talked about the three, the standard, the graduate, extended. So if you want any of those three, you would contact your servicer directly to get on that. The standard comes automatically. So if you wanted the graduated or extended, you would contact your servicer to be on that. And
Okay.
who you find out your servicer is by logging into studentaid.gov and it will say right there on your main page who your servicer is.
Okay, thank you.
The other ones you will apply for differently, but I kind of wanted to break them up a little bit. Sweet. Okay, so the next four are what we call income-driven repayment plans. So income-driven repayment plans offer relief to the standard graduate extended repayment that lower your monthly payments and make it a lot more affordable to go into repayment. They come with forgiveness options. They come with ability to do public service loan forgiveness. They come with adjusting based upon your income. You remember with the standard graduate extended, I didn't say anything about your income. I just said this is how much you pay every month to pay it off at the end. The other ones were created because they said, this isn't affordable. A lot of these borrowers aren't making enough to make this. We need to come up with repayment plan options that have your income in consideration. So I'm actually going to start at the bottom and work my way up this time, just because the income contingent repayment is the one that's least used. So the income contingent repayment is based off 20% discretionary income. And anytime you hear somebody say discretionary income, that's a really crazy mathematical equation that you don't have to memorize, but it basically takes your AGI, so your adjusted gross income in your household, the number of people in your household over 150% of the poverty level of the state you live in. I say that to say, it's not just like I get $2,000 biweekly paycheck. It's going to be solely off 2,000. It's going to say, do you have kids? Are you married? How many people are in your household? Do you live in an expensive state? Are you in the San Francisco Bay Area? Do you live in Flint, Michigan? So it's looking into like where you're living as well to determine the cost of living in the area. And then it spits out the number that's 20% discretionary income. Income contingent has forgiveness at the end of 25 years. So it says if you pay on time every month at the end of 25 years, whatever is left over can be forgiven. However, it will be taxed, which means at the end of 25 years, you have to pay tax on how much money is forgiven. You have to report that on your taxes. And this is when usually people say, well, how much tax do I have to pay? And I say, I don't know, because I don't know if will you have kids in 25 years? Will you be married in 25 years? What will your income look like? What will the tax brackets look like in 25 years? But I tell people 25 years in advance that you can plan on having the tax and you can maybe invest some of money on the side. You can save some money and kind of financially plan for that tax. I have not mentioned anything about public service loan forgiveness yet. That is just 25 years forgiveness plan, whether you work at a for-profit, nonprofit, whether you work at all, doesn't matter. You just have forgiveness at the end of 25 years. Parent Plus loans work a little bit differently. So Parent Plus loans do not qualify for usually any of these repayment plans except for income contingent. And I'll come back to that in a second. But Parent Plus loans also cannot consolidate into your loan. So let's say you borrowed the sub and unsubsidized loan, your parent borrowed the Parent Plus loan, you cannot consolidate all of those together. The Parent Plus loan is the parent's loan. So even though they took it out for you to go to college, it's their loan, it's their repayment, they have to be responsible for it. You do not. However, I usually tell people whatever you guys want to work out in your family is up to you, because the government's not going to say, oh, you can't make payments on this loan, it has to be this person. Whoever makes payments, they don't care as long as there's a payment that comes through, you just can't consolidate them. However, if a parent has loans themselves, so let's say the parent went to, I don't know, let's say they went to grad school at the same time their son or daughter was an undergrad. So they had their grad loans. They also borrowed a Parent Plus loan for their son or daughter in undergrad. They can consolidate their Parent Plus loans with their own unsub and subsidized loan, and then they can apply for the income contingent repayment plan. So that would be the one example of a income-based repayment that they can apply for as well. There are exceptions too that Biden created that if you had multiple Parent Plus loans, you can consolidate them and apply for income contingent as well. That's going to be going away soon though, so I definitely recommend looking into consolidating Parent Plus loans together to apply for that one. With income contingent repayment plan, if you are married filing separately, it will look at your spouse's income when it comes to repayment. So let me rephrase. So when you file taxes, you can be two ways when you file. You can be married filing separately, or you can be married filing jointly. If you decide to do married filing jointly, when you go into repayment, it will separate those incomes it will not separate the incomes between the two because you're joint in doing them together. You will do married filing separately, and they will separate your income if you do filing separately. However, income contingent repayment also is a caveat to say if you have student loan debt and your spouse has student loan debt, so if I have student loan debt, my husband has student loan debt, that we can do income contingent together, because even though it's my student loan debt and it's his student loan debt, we would make separate repayments. With income contingent repayment, we can make one payment that would split between the two for the household. However, I still don't love that option because basically that's now just 10% instead of 20%. So it's 10% of mine, 10% of his, even though we're filing separately, that doesn't matter. And so pay as you earn is also 10%. So there's more benefits from those other ones than it is income contingent. So income contingent is really only good, I would say, for Parent Plus loans. Next, we have what's called income-based repayment. So income-based repayment is 15% of the discretionary income. It has forgiveness at the end of 25 years if you're not a new borrower. So this is where you're going to see this date mentioned a lot on times throughout, which is July 1st of 2014. So that is a lot when all of these repayment plan options October 1st, 2007. So that's when a lot of these repayment plan options were created. This is when public service loan forgiveness was created. This is when we've been under everything for so long. So you have to be not a new borrower after October 1st, 2007. so that you can only qualify for income-based repayment. It's then based off 15% discretionary income. I'm going to come back to new IBR in a second, but just know that income-based repayment is based off 15% discretionary income. It does separate spouse income. So if you're merely filing separately, then it would only look at your income and not your spouse's income on the taxes, which that could be really important. Let's say if your spouse is a doctor and makes a lot of money and you're a teacher or a social worker that doesn't make that much money, you might not want your spouse's income to count towards these income-driven repayment plans because of the fact that they make so much more money than you. Pay as you earn is the really most common one that we had. That is before the SAVE plan that I'll get into in a little bit. So pay as you earn is 10% discretionary income. It has forgiveness after 20 years for both undergrad and graduate loans. However, you had to be a new borrower after October 1st, 2007. And like I said, that's when everything changed when it came to these student loans. So there were a lot of people that said, well, that's not fair. I borrowed loans before October 1st, 2007. So I want to benefit from 10% discretionary income. And I want to benefit for 20 years forgiveness at the end of it. So they came out with what's called revised pay as you earn. So revised pay as you earn doesn't have a minimum of when you were a new borrower based on date. It doesn't matter. You can get it no matter what. It's 10% discretionary income. It's 20 years forgiveness for undergraduates. It's 25 years forgiveness for graduate loans. However, they were noticing that people were filing separately on their taxes and they were like, we don't really like that. So even if you file separately on your taxes with revised pay as you earn, you're still going to have to include your spouse's information on this one as well, too. So I don't really like that one as much because it's not really benefiting you on the full monthly payments. Really, the best ones at that moment in time were pay as you earn when I would meet with students or income-based repayment. They did come out with what's called a new income-based repayment, which is now 10% discretionary income and 20 years forgiveness. However, that's really just the same and saying it differently for revised pay as you earn. So if I was meeting with students pre-pandemic, pre-Biden and the SAVE plan, I would tell them either do pay as you earn or do income-based repayment because those are the best options. Pay as you earn is obviously the lowest one at 10%, but if you can't do pay as you earn, do income-based repayment at 15%. Any questions on those? I haven't talked about the SAVE plan yet, but any questions on those so far?
We do have one question in the chat. So for income-based repayment, the 10% discretionary 20-year forgiveness apply for a 2016 bachelor's, 2023 master's grad, and then are they separate for undergrad and grad?
Okay, hold on. Let me click on the question so I can see it. Okay.
You can unmute,
Okay, go ahead.
Carrie. So I'm referring to the income-based repayment. The third bullet in the second column says 10% discretionary income if new borrower after 2014. So I'm asking, would that apply for someone who graduated undergrad in 2016 and their grad loan for 2023?
So that's why I don't like new income-based repayment, because basically in that case, you would just be pay as you earn. So you really wouldn't be, so new income-based repayment is the 10% in the 20 years. Regular income-based repayment is the 15% in the 25 years. But I find new income-based repayment to be really confusing because that's basically just pay as you earn, which is 10% in 20 years. Do you see that?
Yes, okay.
In your situation, but remember, I haven't talked about the SAVE plan yet, so just keep that in mind. In your situation, I would tell you to do the pay as you earn repayment plan.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why I leave new income-based repayment up there so people know, but it's basically pay as you earn. I found it completely confusing that they even mention it. Okay. So how you apply for these income-driven repayment plans, and remember, there used to be 4. So there used to be the main ones of revised pay as you earn, income-based, which is also new income-based, and then income contingent. But now there's 5, which is the SAVE plan. So I'll talk about that in a second. But if you're doing any of the other ones, so the top 3, the standard, graduate, extended, you would contact your servicer directly. If you want to do any of the income-driven repayment plans, you would do that through studentaid.gov. So you would log into your account at studentaid.gov and you would click on apply for income-driven repayment plan, and then you can choose which one that you want to be on. You can also mark that you want your servicer to choose, but I think it's a lot better and less confusing if you choose which repayment plan you want to be on as well too. It's also important that you file your taxes because these are based off your income. So it's going to look at your most recent taxes to determine what your first year monthly repayment is. So let's say that you're graduating this spring. So you're graduating from Mason in May here. You're then going to start a 6-month grace period. So you won't actually begin repayments until November. And in November, your servicer would send you your first bill and then you have 30 days to pay it. So that monthly bill is actually due in December of 2024. When you apply for an income-driven repayment plan, it's going to be roughly a couple months before the grace period ends. So I'd recommend doing it sometime in October-ish to make sure that you're filling it out, and that way you're giving your servicer time to process everything. So when that first bill comes, it's not based off a 10-year standard repayment, it's based off an income-driven repayment plan. So then that's going to be your monthly payment for 1 year. Then every year, you're going to do what's called a recertification of your repayment. So you'll go back to studentloans.gov, back to studentaid.gov. It used to be called studentloans.gov, back to studentaid.gov. And then you pull in information from the IRS that pulls in your most recent tax information. And then that's your next payment for the next year. So the income-driven repayment plans are just called that. The income drives the repayment. So as you make more money, you would theoretically pay more in the long run, but it's going to be solely based on what your income is. If your income stays the same and you don't make that much, then it would stay that way. And a $0 a month payment does qualify as a qualifying repayment amount. So if you make less than a certain amount, let's say you make less than $20,000, you're one in the household, you might only owe $0 a month, and that does count as an on-time payment because of the fact you don't owe anything because you make too little. Any questions before I go into talking about save plan?
Would you recommend consolidating before applying for income-based repayment?
100%. So the order of operations I would do is do the consolidation when you're in the grace period. You can also put on the consolidation application that you want to wait till the grace period ends, but at least you've already applied for consolidation. And then once that's done, then you can apply for the income-driven repayment plan. They'll put you on a forbearance pause, which basically says, we got to process all this information, so we're not going to require payments from you while we're processing all of this. And then you would begin repayments after that. You only do consolidation once in the beginning, so you don't need to keep consolidating your loans. So I would recommend just doing it in the beginning. Okay, so next is the save plan. So those were all the plans beforehand. Then Biden created what's called the save plan, which stands for saving on, sorry, hold on, the screen is, oops, ignore me. Right. Okay. Saving on value education plan. So you've heard a lot of people mention a save plan. Sorry, there was construction going on next door in the room I'm in, and it's really distracting. So sorry. And I'm sorry if you can hear it too. But it's basically 5% discretionary income. So instead of the 20% or the 10% you heard before, it is 5% discretionary income. It's supposed to be 5% for the undergrad debt and then 10% for the graduate debt. But from what I'm seeing, and this is not like official, it's just from what I'm seeing, from what I've been through for myself as well. If you consolidate your undergrad and graduate debt together, it's going to give you that 5%. So it's like it'll bring down the graduate debt into match what the 5% is. The other ones, remember I talked about how it was over 150% of the poverty level of the state you live in. This one's over 225% of the poverty level of the state you live in. And the reason I say that is it's going to reduce that monthly payment even more. So when you go to studentaid.gov and you choose to look at this loan repayment stimulator and you look at the different plans, you're going to see that SAVE is the lowest one out there and how much lower it is than the pay as you earn plan, mainly solely because of the poverty level change and also because it's the 5%. So as long as the other thing is too, all the other repayment plans out there are still accruing interest. So this is where you heard in the news, everybody was like, yeah, I'm making payments, but my interest is just accruing. And now I owe 3 times the amount of debt I had. And I haven't really paid anything. So that interest is still accruing. With the SAVE plan, the way that Biden has it set up is if you pay on time every month, that interest is basically kind of forgiven every month. So there's no interest that accrues under the SAVE plan. So then the idea is that after 10 years of payment, if you only have $12,000 or less of loans, you can get forgiveness on that. And then it's $1,000, it's another year for every $1,000. So for example, if you have $15,000 left at the end of 10 years, you would keep making payments for basically 13 years, and then you can get forgiveness on how much is left over under the SAVE plan. And then overall, it has forgiveness at the end of 20 or 25 years, undergraduate debt 20 years, graduate debt 25 years, outside of public service loan forgiveness. All the other plans, remember I said that you had to automatically recertify your loans through studentaid.gov, or you had to go into studentaid.gov and recertify your loans every year. With the SAVE plan, that happens automatically. So you do not have to go to studentaid.gov. It will automatically pull your taxes in and adjust what your monthly payment is for the new year. SAVE plan is basically replacing repay. So revise pay as you earn is no longer going to be there, but you can do merit filing separately on your taxes. So I say this to say, hands down, SAVE plan is the best option when it comes to income-driven repayment plans. It has the most forgiveness options and has the lowest monthly payment possible. It has no interest that accrues as long as you're making on-time monthly payments. Whether it's an unsubsidized loan, a graduate plus loan, it doesn't matter. So all the other ones, I would say ignore those and just do the SAVE plan. It's what I did for myself. It's what I've told my friends. It's what I've told other people too as well. The SAVE plan, as long as it exists, is the best option out there. Like I said, those are all for plans for that's called income-driven repayment plans, no matter where you work. We then have what's called public service loan forgiveness. So if you've heard anybody talk about public service loan forgiveness before, it's where it comes that if you work in a nonprofit or government sector for 10 years and you make on-time qualifying repayments, you can get forgiveness at the end of 10 years. The only plans that qualify for forgiveness would be the income-driven repayment plans. So the SAVE plan, pay-as-you-earn, revised pay-as-you-earn, income-based repayment, income contingent, those all qualify for public service loan forgiveness. The ones that do not are the standard payment, the graduated payment, the extended payment. Those do not, because those are set up that you pay everything at the end. Where the income-driven repayment plans are forgiveness plans. It's just instead of 20 or 25 years forgiveness, you can get 10 years forgiveness if you work at a nonprofit. In addition, you do not pay tax at the end of 10 years on how much is forgiven if you work in the nonprofit area. So if you work full-time in a nonprofit sector and you make on-time qualifying repayments for 10 years, you get whatever is left over at the end forgiven, and you do not pay any taxes on it at all. It's better to look at it as 120 payments though, instead of 10 years. And where you get the number 120 is, think about it, one payment a month, there's 12 months in a year, times 10 years is 120 payments. The reason I say that is because the fact that you do not have to make consecutive payments. You could work at a nonprofit for 2 years, take time off, maybe you don't work anymore because you have a baby, and then you could go back to working nonprofit and pick right back off where you left off from. You're still making payments under your income-driven repayment plan during the time off. It's just those payments are counting towards 20 years instead of 10 years. And then you can start right back off where you left off from. Only payments made after October 1st, 2007 count. That's not really relevant now anymore, because that was back when public service loan forgiveness was a thing that started. It said payments you made beforehand don't qualify. Biden has adjusted that to say now it does qualify because of his revised public service loan forgiveness and everything, to try to maximize how many people can get forgiveness. The main servicer is MOHELA. So if you are public service loan forgiveness, then MOHELA is your servicer. However, that is going to be changing to Department of Education. So if you already have MOHELA, you got a message that said the month of May and June, it's going to be switching to the Department of Education. So just hang tight while they do that kind of switch, so it's directly with Department Ed. And what qualifies for public service loan forgiveness? So the only ones that qualify would be the direct loan program. So you'd want to consolidate your FFEL, your Perkins loans into public service loan into direct loans, so it qualifies, and private loans do not. You then also want to do what's called employment certification form. So you're going to studentaid.gov, you're signing up for SAVE plan. You also want to do an employment certification form. So when you go to studentaid.gov, you're going to click on the PSLF tool, so the Public Service Loan Forgiveness tool, And then it's gonna walk you through a process that asks you for the information of where you're working. So if you work here at Mason, Mason is a nonprofit. So if you work full-time at Mason, you would enter in the email address of hrverify@gmu.edu. Then the website, sunaid.gov, will send the form, the employment certification form, to your employer directly. They will fill it out, and then all they're doing is just verifying that you work full-time and that they are a nonprofit. They're not verifying anything else. And then they'll send it back to your servicer that'll process it and say, okay, I will count these payments towards public service loan forgiveness. You technically don't have to apply for public service loan forgiveness and fill out the employment certification form until you're at the end of 10 years. However, you have to put every place of employment that you worked at. So you'll have to put in all of that information, and then you have to wait for your servicer to research everything to make sure everything is all connected and that you do qualify for 10 years. In that time, that could take months. So you still have to make payments until you officially have given word that you've gotten your loans forgiven. So you might end up making 121 or 122 payments. That's because you're not doing it as you go through. So I recommend that everybody every year does an employment certification form, because you want to get credit for all of the payments you've made and all the work you're doing along the way. They also have a really good tool that'll show you how many payments you've made towards 120, and you can kind of track everything through, so you can see how much closer you're getting to the forgiveness at the end of the 10-year mark as well. So the
We have
first,
we have a question in the chat. Can prior nonprofit experience or employment be verified using the form?
yes, if you consolidate your loans, and if you were working and you had loans at the same time too. But let's say that you were working at the nonprofit at the time, but you didn't have any student loan debt, then that work can't count. It has to correlate with the student loan debt you have. But let's say that you were in school and you were working full-time at the nonprofit and you were borrowing student loans at the same time. The way Biden has it set up right now, you can consolidate to have it count, but that's going to be ending a little bit soon. The idea is that you are only counting the times that you're working post-graduation, working full-time, and you're not borrowing any more loans anymore.
And then one more question. Did you state that you can do both SAVE and public service loan forgiveness?
So SAVE is your repayment plan. It has forgiveness at the end of 20 years or 25 years, depending. Public service loan forgiveness is a benefit you have for working in the nonprofit sector. They go hand in hand. So in order to qualify for public service loan forgiveness, you have to be on one of the income-driven repayment plans, and SAVE is one of the ones that qualifies. So your repayment plan is SAVE. The forgiveness you have for being in a nonprofit is public service loan forgiveness. But a lot of times people get confused and they're like, I'm on the public service loan forgiveness repayment plan. That's not a repayment plan. That's just a benefit you have of working in a nonprofit. Your repayment plan is going to be the SAVE repayment plan.
Thank you. And a 9-minute warning.
Oh, thank you. Any more questions? Are we good there?
We are all good on questions. Thank you.
So next we have teacher loan forgiveness. So teacher loan forgiveness says if you are a K through 12 teacher, so not higher education, but secondary education teacher, you can get forgiveness at the end of 5 consecutive teaching years. If you work in the STEM field, basically, you can get forgiveness up to $17,500. And if you're a teacher of anything else, then it's $5,000. You don't apply for teacher loan forgiveness until you are at the end of the 5 consecutive teaching years. And then you just fill out the form that's right there and you send it to your servicer to get forgiveness. There is no reason you can't get both public service loan forgiveness and teacher loan forgiveness at the same time. The only reason you maybe wouldn't would because you're just reducing the amount of money you can get forgiven as public service loan forgiveness. But I don't think it hurts to do both teacher loan forgiveness and public service loan forgiveness. Teacher loan forgiveness is also for not just direct loans. It's also for just family federal education loans, Perkins loans, any government loans. It's just not for private loans. Private loans have no chance of being forgiven. You have to make payments on private loans. Those are like having a credit card. There's no forgiveness plan options available for private loans. Next is forbearance. I just like people to know about forbearance. So forbearance is for those that are kind of just a complete deer in headlights when it comes to repayments of student loans, and they're like, I don't even know where to begin and I can't pay anything. You're allowed up to 1 year of a financial hardship forbearance that just gives you time to kind of get your finances figured out until you have to go into repayment. You want to do forbearance because you want to avoid doing collections. However, forbearance does not count towards a forgiveness plan. So it does not count towards public service loan forgiveness plan. You would want to sign up for an income-driven repayment plan. Let's say you're struggling to find a job right after college and you're only working at a bar making minimum wage on tips. You still want to sign up for the SAVE plan because you could still qualify for $0 and that'll count towards 20 years forgiveness. If you do forbearance, though, you're still making $0 a month payment, but it's not counting towards 20 years. It's not counting towards anything. The only time that forbearance did count towards something was in COVID when nobody had to make repayments on anything for a couple years. Then that did count towards public service loan forgiveness and it counted towards the other forgivenesses too. And also to talk about the SAVE plan, if you have a $0 a month payment that's owed on your SAVE plan and you're working full-time in a nonprofit, that $0 a month payment does qualify towards public service loan forgiveness. So there's a chance you could have an entire year of paying $0 a month payments that would count towards 1 year of the 10 years towards public service loan forgiveness too. Next are other ones. So there are other loan repayment plans or other ones that want to give you money towards your student loans out there. So National Health Service Corps. So if you are a nurse, a social work, medical field, anything that's going to be a high demand like that, you can sign up to do National Health Service Corps, which basically puts you in an underserved area to do medical work or something like that around the country. And then they will give you X amount of money towards your student loans. So typically it's about $50,000 for full-time work for 2 years that you do, and then they'll give you that amount of money that you can use towards your student loans. Same for Virginia Health Service Corps if you want to do the state of Virginia. And then there's also military benefits. So if you work for the military, they have their own forgiveness and repayment options as well. So, like I said, that's a lot of information. I'm happy to go through other slides and kind of talk about the SAVE plan a little bit more. But the biggest takeaways that I want you all to have from here is just the first step after graduation is consolidation. The next step is signing up for the SAVE plan. And the next step is getting yourself signed up for the public service loan forgiveness as well. And then if you have any questions on the way, you can definitely reach out to us at FWB. So financial being fwb@gmu.edu. We're happy to sit down with you one-on-one as well to say, okay, what's your particular situation? Which repayment plan works best for you? And then we'll also have recordings for everything during Money Smart J today on our website as well, and afterwards too. So what kind of questions do you guys have for me? And let me know if you want me to go back to a previous slide or something so you can look at it a little bit more.
We have a question in the chat for when PSLF ends. Is it just the SAVE repayment plan without the forgiveness after 120 payments?
Okay, hold on. Let me look at the question. Sometimes I'm a visual. Okay, when public service, just repayment. So is your question more like, what if public service loan forgiveness doesn't exist anymore? Is that more your question?
Yes, because you mentioned that that will be ending soon for the PSLF. So I figured you were saying that it was no longer active after it ends.
Yeah, so good question. So the temporary public service loan forgiveness is not the main one. So the temporary was the one that Biden was like, okay, if you were on the wrong loans before, you can consolidate and have a count. If you were working before, but you didn't know which area you were working in, that can count. So the temporary one, the regular public service loan forgiveness, they're leaving that at least for now. So that one should be fine to stay around. So you most likely qualify for the regular public service loan forgiveness. This is for people pre-2007, I would say. So you most likely will qualify for the regular one to be fine with that. However, I will say public service loan forgiveness is a very political hot button. It is a thing that both Republicans and Democrats view differently on what they think should be existing. So obviously, as with any new president, public service loan forgiveness could end because any president could come in and say, we're going to get rid of it altogether. We do believe that people would be grandfathered in, meaning if you've already started making payments towards it, you're working towards it, you would be told to go ahead and finish up, but there would be nobody else allowed to enter into new ones. So that's why that employment certification form is very important to do every year as well, too. But you are right. If public service loan forgiveness was just completely removed altogether, then it would just be the save plan up to the 20 years forgiveness at the end. However, right now, it's not even up to the docket right now to even get rid of the main public service loan forgiveness one, just the temporary one for the ones that had older loans.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Can we return to the save plan slide, please?
Yes, happy to. That is the new one too. So, like I said, that one kind of makes all the other ones a little bit irrelevant here. Did you have a particular question on this one?
It doesn't look like there's a particular question in the chat, but if Danielle, if you wanted to come off mute and ask anything, please feel free.
And I would say too, that when you go to studentaid.gov, there is a section for you to apply specifically for the SAVE plan too. Any other questions or anything? Carrie, since we're kind of wrapping up, if you want to stop recording, maybe anybody wants to ask questions off the recording, that's okay.